In about 2 weeks, kids across our area are heading back to class, and that means today marks the perfect time to head back into a bedtime routine. Here to discuss how to do it, sleep medicine physician Dr. Tallavajhula with UTHealth Houston. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
So kids have been off of their routine during summer break. That's normal and expected. So what can we start doing now to set them up for success? Isn't the 2-week window a pretty good time to start back with bedtime routines?
That sounds about right. Depending on how far they are from their actual sleep schedule now, 1 to 2 weeks is usually pretty adequate. The gentle way to do it is to move up both sleep times and wake up times together as a block, about 15 to 20 minutes every couple of days. And it really depends on the child. It's important to have the child invested in doing this, because otherwise a lack of consistency can really throw you off, particularly over the weekends. It's also important to know that, as we advance the sleep schedule up, your best tool really is morning sunlight. So when children wake up and see bright sunlight in the morning, that helps them advance their phase of early mornings, sleep.
Okay, good to know, because, we all have blackout curtains and they serve their own purpose, right? But that probably isn't helpful if you're wanting to get back into the routine of waking up early.
That's right. And, blackout curtains are here for a purpose. The climate's getting hotter. And of course, It helps, particularly in places not like Houston, where, you have near the poles, where you have sunlight for quite some time. They do help, yes.
What about good sleep routines for academics, for grades? How does good sleep play into that?
Good sleep is critical, actually, on a physical, mental, and academic level, really. I mean, we have all seen these cranky toddlers at airports who haven't slept,
Yes.
so think that. And memory consolidation, learning, focus, attention, all of these are improved by having good sleep. You may not see them readily even with 1 night of sleep deprivation, although in children you see them, especially the younger they are, very, very soon. But over time they do catch up, which means as you sleep better, you learn better because you focus more in class, and you retain more because you're able to consolidate those memories.
So it's good for your grades. Can you talk about other ways that sleep is good for kids, specifically because they're in growing bodies?
And that is a very important thing to remember. It's good motivation for kids, particularly adolescents, to remember that you secrete growth hormone when you sleep. So as you're trying to grow taller, as you're trying to build muscle, all of those things are critical functions of sleep. When you don't, you're just not as efficient, which means all the work you put in towards exercise, towards athletics, towards building up stamina and endurance, all of those are not efficient. So if you want the biggest bang for your buck, sleep is it.
Is that why kids need more sleep, or kids even being teenagers too, just young people, is that why they need more sleep than adults?
Well, the growing brain, if you think about it, when you're a toddler or a neonate, they sleep more than half the day. That's when your brain is myelinating, that's when it's learning to form connections. And as you grow older, wakefulness is sort of a learned phenomenon. So you learn how to stay up a little bit more. But growing children need more sleep in general because they're learning new things every day, and that needs to be retained in the brain. And that's something you do better when you sleep.
I've never met a sleep expert who approves of screen times. What would your message be to people who, or to the parents of kids who've probably been looking at video games and screens all summer long? Do they need to stop that now as they get ready to go back into a regular bedtime routine?
It would be hard to do. For one, screens are ubiquitous. Now they're everywhere. I mean, they weren't there 10 years ago. But now we understand that as you stimulate yourself more with screen time, you just do not detach enough to fall asleep easier. Now, for some people, you're able to turn that screen off and fall asleep right away. And this applies to both adults and children. And maybe in that case, pulling a screen off will cause more agitation and, just not help sleep. But if you see these kids closer and closer to bedtime, somewhat partially an addiction to the screen because you're trying to win the next game and the next game, move up these levels, there's probably time to put a stop. Maybe replace it with something less stimulating, like a book. That's usually my suggestion, is to replace with something that's a little less stimulating than something that keeps you on a go, go, go mode.
Is the recommendation to still put screens down, if you can, about 2 hours before bedtime? Because that feels like a long time too.
It does, but a lot of this was based on previous research and what was thought as light impairing sleep. We now know that light probably doesn't have as much of an effect, just as the sheer content on those screens. So it is probably important to start putting them away about 1.5 to 2 hours. With sleep, the important thing is to not be as militarized as possible, but to allow for flexibility, because that's also the time that you calm down. And militarizing something in excess discipline also doesn't help. But yes, maintaining a consistent sleep schedule, withdrawing and slowly detaching from all forms of stimulation, maybe an hour and a half, 2 prior to sleep, all of those are still good recommendations. Probably the single most important thing is to maintain consistency and do whatever you do every single day at the same time, because then the body and the brain just get used to it, just like you go to a gym to build muscles.
That's a great point. Dr. Tallavajhula, anything else that you'd like to tell parents now that we're within 2 weeks of starting school again?
There is a move on part of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine to get schools to understand that adolescents tend to sleep in later because just the way their hormones are made. So at the legislative level, while we are trying, we'd appreciate it if parents also made that, effort at the community level. But understand that sleep is not overflow time for things that you were not able to get done in the day. It is that critical part of the night. About 1/3 of your human cycle is devoted to sleep for a particular reason, and to understand how critical it is to body functioning. I think if parents emulate that behavior, children tend to learn.
I was going to say, you're speaking directly to parents now. We're trying to make up for all the things that we couldn't do during the day after the kids go to bed. So that's a great point. Our kids are going to watch what we do. We appreciate your time this morning.